First, I'd like to commend the Media Foundation for West Africa for this really insightful report that they have produced. And the review of the report will come, I think, the next speaker. But on the issue of misinformation, disinformation, polarization, and state threats to Ghana, I would like to take all of us back and set the context for where we find ourselves today as a country, and even as countries of the world. Because the problems that we face in Ghana regarding mis and disinformation, fake news, and so on, are really not uniquely Ghanaian at all. Bigger countries, stronger countries are grappling with these same issues and have not found solutions that we can emulate. So we are all feeling out in the dark to find a way forward. What we do know for a fact is that this is a threat to the stability of states and a threat to the global community and the way it works. As humans, our ability to communicate the way we do is what separates us from our cousins, the beasts. That is not to suggest that animals do not communicate. Indeed, there is ample evidence of animals like dolphins, monkeys, and bees seemingly communicating in quite sophisticated ways. What is unique about human communication, however, is the ability to conjure stories from our imagination, share stories amongst ourselves, and be motivated and inspired to take actions that we would not have taken otherwise if it hadn't been for the stories. Stories that alter perception and elicit emotional responses, leading to significant consequences. I can imagine the first Homo sapiens sitting around their campfire telling heroic tales of their hunting expeditions, laced with heavy doses of exaggeration, to an enthralled audience who listened wide-eyed, breaking into spontaneous applause intermittently, as they also imagine how awe-inspiring their own stories will be one day. I take us back to that place in time in order to set the stage for today's discussion and establish that the era of post-truth, the era of misinformation, disinformation, and all of that has existed since the beginning of human communication. It's not a new thing at all. And that context is important because we need to steady ourselves and not panic, but move on a path that brings us solutions. Because even though it's been around for a long time, we all know that today is different. It's different, and I'm sure that, and I'll come to that in a minute, at the time that the printing press was invented, they also thought that this was the end of it all. It's very different. But still, there's something different about today's situation. From those ancient times till today, leaders and rulers often use misinformation to manipulate public perception or maintain control. For example, in ancient Rome, emperors routinely used propaganda to portray themselves as divinely chosen or victorious in battle, even when the truth was different. So did the pharaohs, the kings, and the queens of old. Today, we even have leaders of established democracies wantonly indulging in disinformation while vociferously accusing their political opponents of sin. Where does the truth lie? What we do know is that, again, just to indicate how old this problem is, both the holy books of the Abrahamic religions warn us against misinformation, one way or the other. The 9th of the 10 commandments in the Old Testament says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor." And chapter 49, verse 6 of the Holy Quran admonishes believers, saying, "If an evildoer brings you any news, verify it so you do not harm people unknowingly." I did not know this, but I was very heartened to find out. Looking at the caliber of people gathered here, I know there is no need for me to give formal definition of mis and disinformation. However, for the sake of clarity of discourse, I will give brief definitions. We know that misinformation refers to false or inaccurate information spread without ill intent, often because of misunderstanding or ignorance. Also, often because others have set a trap and the disseminators of misinformation do not even know that they are actors in the grand scheme. They give their free time, their data to pushing content, to further agendas that they have no ideas about. We have no ideas about, because we are all guilty. Disinformation is deliberate spreading of false information with the intent to deceive or manipulate and enhance economic growth. Of course, the printing press also boosted the mis- and disinformation industry and contributed significantly to the emerging schism that led to the Protestant Reformation and the split from the Catholic Church. I think that we talk about these things, but if you imagine how it felt to be in that time, you would probably think that the world is coming to an end, because the things that happened were unthinkable things, very similar to the things that are happening today, which we find unthinkable. The emergence of print, newspapers, and mass media into very profitable ventures that also bestowed the owners with great power and influence, leading to significant shift in society, because wealth, power, and influence no longer converged only in the priesthood and the monarchy. And that a new class of recently ordinary but now powerful men had so much control over how people made important decisions. And these powerful men were those who profit and continue to profit from information dissemination through mass media. I can imagine the apprehension in the public discourse of the time, similar to the discussions we are having today, where we appreciate the benefits of the disruptive technology known as the internet and social media, yet are wary, and rightfully so, of its negative elements. During the era of the World Wars, commencing with the First World War in 1914 to the end of the Cold War in 1991 thereabouts, disinformation was deliberately, aggressively, and systematically deployed by all sides. The propaganda machine was in overdrive on all sides, as the warring parties sought to win not just physical wars, but also the most important war, which is the war for the hearts and minds of people. They glorified their deeds and misdeeds, just as their cave-dwelling ancestors probably did thousands of years before them. Governments made use of posters, films, pamphlets, global radio stations, global media networks to promote national unity, which is not a bad thing, but also to demonize their enemies. By 1939, the onset of World War II, disinformation campaigns were more organized, with both sides using tactics like fake radio broadcasts, fabricated intelligence, and even staged events to confuse the enemy. But they will tell you that these are all tactics of war, and all is fair in war. I don't know about love though. The infamous Operation Fortitude is an example where the Allies created a whole fake army to deceive their opponents about the location of the D-Day invasion. The Cold War was a significant period for the use of disinformation as a tool in geopolitical strategy. Both the United States and the Soviet Union, the main geopolitical players of the time, engaged in these things one way or the other. And I know that this is open to debate. I'm not making a categorical statement. I'm just saying that everybody did some of the bad things, even though everybody also did good things. With the advent of the internet and social media, misinformation and disinformation have reached new heights, both in terms of volume and speed of spread. Digital platforms have created an environment where false information can be disseminated rapidly and often without much oversight. Also can be disseminated cheaply, because as we say in Ghana, all you need is data. All you need is data, and information will be flying. The 21st century has witnessed several major events where misinformation and disinformation have played central roles. The rise of the platforms, the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, X now, have become powerful tools for spreading information. However, they have also become breeding grounds for fake news, conspiracy theories, and so on and so forth. The spread of misinformation in the context of social media and the internet has been exacerbated by the algorithms that prioritize engagement over accuracy. So the algorithms will continue to throw things that you will engage with to you. The things you see on your timeline are not random at all. They are the result of algorithms looking at what you are already looking at and giving you more of that. And the algorithm does not discriminate. It will give you what it thinks gives you satisfaction, true or false. Today, we contend with artificial intelligence. As we contend with artificial intelligence, it is time to rethink the fundamental assumptions around democracy, especially when it comes to balancing freedom of speech and the way in which the internet lends itself to be used as such an effective tool through misinformation and disinformation to undermine and threaten the very notion of the democracy we are trying to safeguard. Are citizens well served in situations where democracy no longer represents the will of the people because some pesky robots have been deployed to skew election outcomes? Is this still a democracy then? If it is no longer the will of the people, but the will of a few robots that have been deployed by even fewer people in pursuit of agenda, are we still calling it a democracy at that stage? As technology continues to evolve, the battle against misinformation and disinformation grows more complicated. The rise of AI-generated content, deepfakes, and increasingly sophisticated propaganda techniques pose new challenges. Governments, tech companies, civil society groups, everybody is scrambling to find ways to mitigate the spread of false information whilst trying to still balance free speech. These technologies allow for the creation of incredibly realistic but entirely fake videos and audios that can deceive people. In response to the rising misinformation, fact-checking organizations and media literacy programs have grown. These are critical in helping the public navigate the complex information environment. But how far do these go? We appreciate fact-checking that is conducted by Media Foundation for West Africa, Dubawa, and all of those other great organizations. But really, truly, we all know that when the information has gone viral and has traveled way ahead, fact-checking is just a boring stepchild or something like that, or a boring unwanted cousin or something like that, because it doesn't go that far. It hardly goes that far. One day, when there's enough interest, enough commitment, and enough funding from ourselves to find out how things go viral and whether fact-checking goes as far as the viral things are gone, We have to find out, because right now, even though we all have an idea, we're still in the realm of speculation. Maybe when we know for a fact, we will begin to get more concerned and begin to take action and take steps to address this problem that we face. Before the rise of the internet, disinformation in Ghana was primarily spread through traditional media outlets such as newspapers, radio, and television. While Ghana has had a relatively free press compared to many African countries, these platforms still struggle with the issue of bias, sensationalism, and unverified reporting. During the colonial period, misinformation was often used by authorities to manipulate public opinion, suppress dissent, and control narratives. The colonial government would sometimes spread misleading information to undermine nationalist movements and maintain control in order to maintain control over the economy. However, this was often more about disinformation directly crafted by powers, the ruling power, rather than general spread of false information amongst the public. Post-independence in Ghana, after Ghana gained independence in 1957, the media landscape became briefly diverse. However, as we all know already, we went back into a time of restricted media and censorship, state-controlled messaging through media outlets, manipulation of information to enhance political power and justify unjustifiable decisions. This period also saw the emergence of political pamphlets, rumors, as tools of misinformation, particularly around elections, government decisions, and position tactics. Eventually, Nkrumah himself, who some say was a purveyor of this sort of thing, suffered, became a victim of disinformation, especially in the case of the Kankan Nyame saga. Do you know what Kankan Nyame is? Yeah. I'm very old. I don't know how I got this old, but I remember things I should not remember. Because when I speak to people and I say, do you remember culture of silence? They are looking at me. It's now some historical thing deep in the annals of, something. They don't remember. I was young, but I remember. So I guess I'm old. Now. Who remembers Kankan Nyame? Case in point. Let's move on. No, please, this one is research. Find out yourself. During the rule of the military regimes in the 1960s and 70s, after the US government was reformed, media censorship was rampant. Military governments will often control the dissemination of information. Misinformation will deliberately be spread to discredit opponents and rivals. In this environment, state-run media became a critical tool for spreading disinformation. Today, state-run media is struggling to catch up. The internet has taken the lead. Social media is far ahead. So you see, changing times. Interestingly, again, small history. Those who were shouting, let the blood flow, because some people had 3 toilets in their homes, and people were so angry about that. Later on, were also very upset because somebody had a jacuzzi. If you look at the actors in this drama, you will see how interesting life is and how far we've come as a people. Again, find out about these things yourself. Find out about 3 toilets in Ghana, what it meant at a point in time, and dig up the story about the jacuzzi. In fact, somebody should write the book Toilets and jacuzzis, shaping the mindset of the Ghanaian, the past, the present, and the future. Something like that. Who will write this book for us? Somebody needs to write that book. George. Because George has the information in detail, so he should write the book. Yeah, I'm just mentioning things. In the 1990s, Ghana transitioned towards a more democratic society with the onset of the Fourth Republic, with greater media freedom, particularly after the 1992 Constitution legalized private media. Hallelujah. The explosion of private radio stations and television networks helped diversify the media landscape, but also led to an increase in the spread of unverified or unbiased news. Again, how many of you ever heard of Radio I? Who knows what Radio I is? I am truly old. Who knows Radio I? So few. My goodness. Please, that's the next assignment. Go and find out what Radio I is and what Radio I did for this country and how transformational it was. If you are a media practitioner, you have no business not knowing what Radio I is. Radio I gave us that alien idea that broadcasting would exist outside of GDC. It was pretty wild back then. That idea was wild, truly, that there would be broadcasting outside of GDC. Coming to the 1990s and early 2000s, Ghana saw the emergence of tabloid journalism and sensationalist reporting on the increase. Many newspapers, radio stations would often publish unverified rumors, particularly regarding political landscape. Misinformation was rampant, misinformation was all over the place. Stories that focused on scandal, inflammatory topics, to increase readership, just to increase readership, with no recourse to, is this good for society? Is it even true? Is it even true? Misinformation at this stage was mostly politically motivated, often targeting opposition, government officials, or high-profile figures. As mobile phones began to gain widespread use in the late 1990s and early 2000s, rumors and misinformation began to spread more rapidly through text messages and email. Who remembers that time? When all the filler was by email. While the internet was not as pervasive as it is today, access to information began to expand, and so did opportunities for false information to circulate. Mobile phones provided a new platform for misinformation, especially in rural areas where access to formal news outlets was limited. From 2010, we recall that the digital and social media, the digital age, social media, the explosion of fake news. The advent of social media and smartphones revolutionized the way information is shared in Ghana. From the early 2010 onwards, misinformation, disinformation, and fake news began to proliferate aggressively, with more people gaining access to platforms like Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram. These platforms have become both the primary source of news, especially for younger generation, at the same time the breeding ground for rumors and fake content. As social media usage grew, managing misinformation became harder to control. Fake news stories spread quickly on platforms, WhatsApp especially, for here in Ghana. For instance, as the previous speaker mentioned, rumors about elections, political scandals, also economic crisis, and all sorts of things fly on WhatsApp at breakneck speed. And the moment the disinformation is put out, the Misinformation ensures that everybody hears it. Social media allows stories to go viral, often outpacing official media outlets in terms of reach and engagement. During Ghana's 2016 presidential election, misinformation and disinformation was widespread, especially on social media. False claims of electoral fraud, doctored images of political candidates, misleading reports about voting irregularities, and so on and so forth. But what have we seen? 2016 was really the eye-opener, but it got worse in 2020. And it went through the roof in 2024. Unbelievable. WhatsApp in particular became a major platform for this sort of chain messages, including containing rumors, false information, and verified stories, will circulate at rapid speed, leading to confusion, fear, and panic, pushing people to emotional responses that will lead to violence, public disorder. Like I said, 2020 saw an escalation, and by 2024 we are now in full crisis mode when it comes to misinformation, disinformation, and fake news, particularly around election campaigns. Because if we continue on the trajectory that we are on, we are in for a really bumpy ride. Really bumpy ride. Social media is the battleground for manipulating voters. Like I mentioned before, pesky robots, fake accounts, paid advertisements are used to amplify specific political messages. And remember, I mentioned also that the algorithm is lurking in the background, just giving you more of what you've looked at already. So if you fall into a rabbit hole and land in some strange parts of the internet where you don't even recognize the discourse that is going on there, once you stay there for a few minutes, just out of curiosity, the next day the algorithms will throw more of that to your timeline. And eventually, you begin to make sense of this strange information. You begin to see how things are connected in ways that you didn't see before, without even realizing that you are completely being manipulated. So I've mentioned the fact-checking initiatives already, and we need to really interrogate whether it is enough. Is it enough? Is it having the impact that it should have? It is important, it is necessary, but is it going as far as it should? Media literacy campaigns, also very important. In fact, media literacy campaigns, in my view, are even more important in this case, because when people understand how to consume the information that comes to them online, it makes the work of the fact checker a little easier, because people don't just get carried away by the first thing that lands on their WhatsApp in the morning. Regulation and legislation. This is a big, big issue. I wanted to say the big some animal in the room, but I gotta be careful. I don't mention animals. So it's just the big issues that we are all concerned with. Regulation and legislation. How far should we go? How should we do it? Where is the concrete data that will inform that regulation? These are the things that we must be looking at going forward. The other thing is media ownership, which we've always talked about. And previous speaker mentioned that in Ghana, we know the score, we know the situation. But Ghana is just a reflection of what is happening now. Because the tech bros have taken over our public sphere. You know who the tech bros are. I should tell you that I also lurk in unsavory parts of the internet from time to time. But the owners, the billionaire owners of platforms have taken over and are deciding what we see and what we do. There's nothing wrong with that in principle, because it's not different from the person who owns any other media house, right, to an extent. But again, in the context of the democracy, that is supposed to be the foundation for the free speech that now makes it possible for these platforms to exist. Now, is the democracy being threatened, or is the democracy being allowed to flourish in the context of these platforms in the way they are evolving now? I don't have answers, but I hope that these conversations will touch these things as well. Because, like it or not, it is a global village. It is a global village. Everything that happens elsewhere happens, it used to be, right, that things happen in bigger countries and we felt the impact here. But today we know that things happen here, it is felt in the bigger countries as well, isn't it? It's not the case. When some unknown powers and forces go into a country and work to destabilize democracies, and the people start walking to their countries, it's a side effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So now when things happen here, others feel it as well. So in fact, it's more of a global village now, because we are all grappling with the same issues, particularly on this disinformation thing. But also, we are now so interconnected that when something happens in one place, it quickly affects everybody else. Who in Ghana had heard of some place in another country where it is claimed that a virus escaped from a lab? You had never heard of that. Had you heard of that term before? George knows everything. He probably had. But many people had never heard of that place. As you can see, I'm being very careful. No problems. But many people had never heard of that place. But when that incident happened there, we all locked down, isn't it? We all wore masks and we all lived in fear, isn't it? We are more connected than we are willing to admit these days. So these are the issues that we should be discussing, or looking at, or seeing as the backdrop for the main discussion today, which is the report that we are about to hear our next speaker's report. So my role today, at least when I was given the topic, I picked my angle. They can give you a topic, but they can't give you an angle. So I picked the angle because I know that those who are involved in collecting the data, preparing the report, have a stronger grasp of the content. They can do a better job with it. But I also know that a lot of times we talk about things without remembering the history, without setting the context. And that is unfortunate, because that always gives you better clarity. Now that you know about various things, culture of silence, radio eye, and all of these things. If you go and research it, no, I'm not telling you. Use the data. Use your data profitably to educate yourself on things like this. But now that we know about these things, when we start to address the current crisis that we are facing, for which we are here to discuss, we understand where we are coming from. And we understand that in the specific case of misinformation, disinformation, and fake news, there is nothing new under the sun. Thank you very much.